You're listening to Not So Live from Asteroid G. I'm Mike Finkelstein. With me, as always, is...
Dr. Josh Schaefer.
Doctor. So you've gone from lawyer to, lord to doctor now in the span of, what, a couple
minutes?
weeks? Did you do one of those send away for your diploma things or get your degree? You can major in business management or lordship.
I've already been sucked into one of those.
Still paying it off right now. So why doctor?
Dr. Emmett Brown.
Ah, you want to talk about Back to the Future, do
Yeah.
you? Well, it is an interesting thing to discuss with Back to the Future. Is I'm thinking about it since you mentioned that you wanted to talk about this movie. And I can't think of a more successful time travel franchise. Because, you have successful single movies that are about time travel. None of which are specifically coming to mind right at this particular juncture. Thought Back to the Future. The only other one I can think of is basically another film in the same genre, which is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But you don't get a lot of movies that are about time travel that actually get a series of movies. Because, it's like once you've done the time travel resolves itself and then suddenly you're done.
Yeah.
The only other one I can think of that's a series is the two Bill and Ted movies. And the second one's really not even about time travel.
They time travel for a little bit.
At the very end, but most of the movie is about, traveling to heaven and hell and interspace and stuff like that. Yeah, Station. What other, can you think of any other movies that do time travel more than once in a series?
No.
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 So, and not only that, but...
I'm sure there's something really obvious.
Yeah, that we're just not thinking about.
Planet of the Apes is kind of time travel-y.
Well, that's fair, but you don't really realize it until, the end of the movie, and then the second movie doesn't address it, and it's only the third movie that also uses it. The rest of it's just, about the consequences of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the new movies don't even address it. So it's very rare that time travel is the main concept of a movie and is repeated throughout the series. And Back to the Future is the only one that I can think of that really does it. It's
Looper.
Looper's one movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looper is a fantastic movie, don't get me wrong. It's a really great time travel movie, but yeah, Back to the Future. I mean, the other ones that were really about it, like Butterfly Effect, they're loosely related movies that aren't about it, and only one of them was released in theaters. But Back to the Future...
Tom Cruise movie, Live, Die, Repeat, or whatever.
If it gets a sequel.
Yeah.
Right now it hasn't. And is that really a time travel movie? It's
No,
more of a Groundhog Day movie.
Yeah, it's more Groundhog Day. You're right. Does Groundhog Day count as a time travel movie?
No. Time loop movies are a different thing. It's an outside force causing them to time loop, and it's against their will. Time travel specifically, I have a machine or something that allows me to go back before even my day has started, go back into the 1950s in the case of Back to the Future. So it's interesting to me in that respect. So let's talk Back to the Future then. Obviously, there's only one good movie in the series.
No.
Okay.
I love all three of them.
Okay.
But, I mean, I can't understand why the third one is people's least favorite movie.
I hate the second one. The second one I hate so much. And while I think the third one is good, the third one is a sequel to the second one. The two sequels to the original movie feel like they're a different continuity to the original movie. Because, the first one's about Marty McFly accidentally time traveling back in time and having to deal with the consequences of his existence in the past on his parents' lives and changing everything about it. And then it's a closed sequence that just resolves itself. There was an obvious one. Terminator.
Oh, duh.
That's a time travel movie.
Although, I don't really think of it as a time travel movie,
well, that's because the main characters aren't the ones time traveling.
Yeah, it's the robots.
Yeah, time travel is the mechanic around them.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. That's with an asterisk in the time.
It is. Anyway, so the first movie feels like a separate entity because the Marty McFly that's in that movie is different from the Marty that's in the second and third movies because the one guy, he doesn't have any problem with people calling him a coward and he doesn't care about certain things. And then suddenly he becomes like an MRA rageaholic.
No, I think he had that issue the entire time, but I think that was part of the... Oh, didn't he have the Nobody Calls Me Chicken in all three of the movies?
Started in the second movie.
You sure?
Yes.
I don't know.
It's a character flaw they introduced in the second movie to have a carry-through growth moment for him, but it wasn't in the first movie. And that's my problem, is it feels like a different version of his character. Everything else around him feels great, but it's like, it's almost like, if you look at it this way, when you look at time travel, a character travels, comes back, and sees the consequences of their time traveling. From that point forward, when it's a closed loop, you have to assume the next version of him to travel is a different version of the character, one who's grown up with the events as it was. So it almost feels like the Marty McFly from the first movie no longer exists by the time the second movie rolls around. We're on the second loop for him, and we're getting a different version of Marty with new character flaws introduced because of the whole time travel shenanigans of the first movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's clearly, I won't say Shakespearean because I feel like it's not.
I don't think that's the right term at all.
Well, in the fact that it's a story divided into 3 arcs or 3 acts.
Only the first one was planned originally with a different actor, but
but I mean, there's definitely character growth throughout the trilogy.
There is,
and I think the main, I won't say main, the big purpose for the Back to the Future franchise is, I don't know, it's kind of like a muddled thing because it's like, you're the Terminator, the future is what you make type of thing. But then it's like, my life sucked, but then I went back in time and fixed some stuff that I didn't really know, and butterfly affect my family to being rich and not weird and creepy.
Yeah, except he does that, and then he immediately leaves again and doesn't even get to reap the benefits of it.
Not until the third movie.
No, yeah, it's a strange arc that his family goes through that, like, he seems almost untouched by for the most part. Yeah,
and
especially once you get into that weird Trumpian, like, middle sequence of the second movie.
Oh, it's so real now.
I know.
Biff Tannen as president's creepy.
More or less president, yeah. Wasn't he mayor?
He was mayor.
Yeah.
But I mean, fantastic job on his acting. Like, I know you don't like the second movie.
I don't.
And there are problems with it. It's weird that, it's their future in the 80s is now our past at this point, I think.
Yeah, I had a Facebook group for the longest time celebrating when Marty McFly finally made it to the future.
Yeah.
And that's 3 years in the past at this point.
And which is kind of, it's weird to think that society hasn't really progressed as...
Where's my flying car? Where's my my hoverboards?
Like, especially with, like, social issues, like in the 80s. Because it was kind of as Hollywood usually is, a little, I won't say social justice-y, but
it was very much an 80s pastiche for the most part. It's the future as filtered through what the 80s thinks the future is going to be.
Yeah. And it's like, some of it's kind of like
that. I would say that the future portion of Back to the Future 2 is the part that's aged the least well.
Yes, and I think that's where the issue is, because when I watch it now, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
We barely have self-driving cars. Like,
yeah,
we don't have holograms. Actually, most people think holograms are kind of lame now.
Maybe that's just another butterfly effect of Marty McFly doing the time travel loop the first time around. We're on an alternate timeline from where we are right now, and he's in one where everything happens. Maybe we're just living in the one where Biff Tannen got the sports almanac, and we
shit. that explains a little bit.
That explains a lot right there. Yeah, the second one I don't like. I don't like it for a number of reasons. The first is of course, at this point, the fact that it has not aged well, and I think even within like 5 years of when that movie came out, it was pretty clear it was not going to age well. Yeah, but it's okay. So here's a big flaw with the movie that I've never been able to get past. Old Biff travels back in time, gives young Biff the sports almanac. He then travels forward in time with young Biff having sports almanac and already being able to do stuff. And when he gets to the future, it's the same future he left.
Yeah, that's...
When Marty McFly and Doc then travel back in time, time has already resolved itself. And they never once introduced a mechanic saying it takes time for...
Well, if you think about it, though, Marty and Doc go back in time and stop from happening.
Yeah, but if that was the case, they should.
The timeline doesn't work. It's a plot hole.
The timeline doesn't work. They should either have already started seeing the future slowly shift around them, like the ghost picture of Marty in the first movie, or it should have immediately resolved around them. and they shouldn't even realize they're in the wrong timeline. They should just it should be an alternate version of them trying to figure out what the hell happened.
So I think they have a very small scene where they try to do that, because I think there's a scene when Marty and Doc first meet up with each other in the second one.
Yeah.
And Doc explains, like, this is the normal timeline. And he's like, we're on this alternate timeline.
That's about the midway point after they realize everything's wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they don't explain it very well, and it doesn't really hold up with the mechanics they've already introduced.
Yeah. And I think that was just kind of like everything that's different is alternate.
They're trying to Band-Aid over a flaw that they just can't explain away.
Yeah.
Whereas there are a number of ways they could have started the movie where Doc and Marty just wake up in the wrong timeline, immune to the changes because they're already time travelers, and they have to figure out what happened from the go.
Yeah.
That could have been an interesting plotline on its own, but it's even if you make them immune, they shouldn't just still exist in the future timeline that no longer exists, when the change happens.
Well, I mean, if you think about it too, back to your to kind of throw your own point in your face, I guess. But Biff, when he travels back in time, becomes a time traveler. So there's nothing saying that the future didn't happen, and when he comes back, when Marty goes back and forth through the future.
I have no problem with him traveling and Marty and Doc necessarily remaining in the old timeline. That's one thing. They're in the future where that Biff left. But once he makes a change in the past, as happened with Marty and Doc in the first movie, and then he travels back to the future, Biff should exist in a different timeline without the original Prime Doc and Marty. They should be in one trapped off timeline, and Biff should now be in a future where he won.
No, but when he travels back though, there's nothing saying that that's not the new timeline, because
Biff, he doesn't make the timeline until he travels back. What I'm saying is you've got a fork, and Doc and Marty exist on one time. Or if you want to use the Discworld term, the trousers of time or trousers of causality. They exist in one leg. Biff travels back to the crotch, and by changing a single thing, he moves on a different leg of the trousers, and he should exist somewhere else from where Doc and Marty are at.
Yeah.
So
okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So either time has to resolve automatically around them, or he can't travel back to where they're at, but he travels on the same leg when he shouldn't be able to. And that's the flaw I have with it, and that's what ruins the movie for me.
Oh.
Plus, the issues with Marty being a different character and everything else, and yada, yada, yada.
I don't really see the different character thing, because I think he had kind of a don't back down attitude kind of in the first movie.
He really didn't.
I mean,
will have to go back and watch them again, but the last time I watched them, I was looking for it, and he was just a different character.
I think that they definitely played up the nobody calls me a chicken thing. And I think I was actually thinking about the 1950s scene in Back to the Future 2 with that. But, I mean, he still kind of had a...
He really didn't, though, because, when Biff, confronts him at the car where he's hanging out with his mom initially, and he's expecting George to be there. In the first movie, he backs down and he's very passive in comparison and everything else. But the Marty we see in the second movie, in no way, shape, or form would have had that same reaction. It feels like a different character.
I mean, time travel's a bitch.
I'm just saying.
But I mean, he kind of found himself through that character arc in the first movie, though, so... I mean, I'm not trying to be like a character flaw apologist, but
Marty rights activist.
But I mean, he did go through some stuff, and you saw how his courageous behavior, when he jumps in front of the car to save his dad, and
yeah.
So he's,
but that's different from him being a coward, a guy who refuses to let people call him a coward. It's a different character flaw there that doesn't show up until the second movie, and then doesn't resolve itself until the third movie.
Yeah, and I will say, too, that thinking about it, that the one thing that's always kind of bugged me was how he kind of had that personification of, I'm courageous and whatnot, and having kind of a weak-willed dad maybe gave him a complex for it. So I can explain that part of the character away a little bit, but that doesn't explain how he's afraid to send his band tape in and all this other stuff. That kind of always...
Yeah, there's some flaws there.
Yeah.
Especially when you try and align the character from the first movie to how he then gets represented in the second and third. So the second one doesn't work for me, but I do enjoy the third one for what it is.
Which is a lot of people hate it.
Yeah, and the thing is the fact, because it decides to avoid the 1950s and it doesn't rehash this first movie like the second one does, and does a lot of other stuff, there's some flaws with the third movie. Like, Doc Brown gets an unnecessary love interest that just doesn't work for me at all. But on the whole, that portion of this trilogy has aged a lot better. Because I
also love westerns, so it's
it doesn't have that innate 80s feel that the first movie does, and that weirdly future 80s thing that all time travel 80. Like, if you watch a time travel movie from the 1970s or a movie that's futuristic but was filmed in the 1970s, like Future World, it doesn't feel like the future. It feels like you're playing around in what Disney feels like the future was going to be when it designed it in the 1950s.
Yeah,
it's so bad.
Yeah,
but the Western portion of Back to the Future 3 has aged really well. Because it's already so far removed in the past for us that they got to just play with different tropes and a whole different storytelling style, and it works. It works in a way that the second movie just doesn't work for me.
No, and the only part, my biggest pet peeve with the third movie, and I know it's minor, is when Doc Brown from the 50s sends him back to the 1800s.
Yeah.
And he dresses them up as like that weird atomic cowboy
Atomic Cowboy, yeah.
It's like, he would know better, I feel like.
He should know. I mean, Westerns were very popular in that era. You would think he would know better.
Yeah. So that was my biggest qualm with it.
Yeah, it's a dumb gag that doesn't play. And there's a few little gags that don't play like that.
Michael J. Fox's terrible Irishman impression.
God, that one's so bad.
It was so cringy.
Well, and there's the thing of, why did Doc have to go through all that effort with the train and getting Marty into the future using like that as their speed thing, when clearly if they just taken a little more time, he really could have invented a time travel device. He swears up and down he can't do it, and then like 7 years later he's done it. Like, really, you couldn't just apply yourself for 15 minutes and think on this? You're obviously a brilliant genius. You should be able to figure out how to make a time travel device. And
it's steam powered.
Yeah, and flies.
Well, I mean, they had flying cars, so he had that technology.
He had to have a flying. He just had to have a flying train.
Yeah, and who's to say he didn't make a couple stops in the future and just steal stuff?
Well, yeah, but
because
he still managed to make a time travel device with 1800s technology.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So there are a couple flaws, but on the whole, I like the third one much better than the second one.
Yeah, the second one's always the letdown. There's a couple of good scenes I like in it, and it's good setup for the third movie, but some of it's just, most of like the alternate 1980s stuff I could do without. I thought it was a little too over the top.
Yeah. The dark Trump present or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a bit much.
Yeah,
it is a bit much. I mean, it's acted well for what it was, but it's a bit much. Yeah. But then the movie, that's just the movie basically spending its time spinning its wheels and re-commenting on itself, because it already got to reinvent the 80s once, so they felt like reinventing it again before going back and reinventing the 1950s. So I don't know how much you've done with the extended universe of Back to the Future.
I played the Telltale.
Did you?
game.
Did you play through it?
Yeah.
How was it?
Eh.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. I saw it and I thought, the voice actor that they got to replace Marty McFly was good.
Yeah, he did a good job. Yeah,
he did a good job, and obviously they got back Christopher Lloyd for Doc Brown, and he's always good. But it didn't feel like Back to the Future to me.
No, it felt like Marty was a little too dopey.
Yeah,
and it's like, what's the door type stuff, and I don't know. It didn't really hook me. I didn't play too far into it because I got distracted and.
Well, it's just a thing of it's an adventure game, so it's automatically a weird collectathon with puzzles, and that doesn't feel like Back to the Future.
No.
Back to the Future is comedic and direct.
Yeah.
There's a problem, we automatically know the solution, let's just go solve it. And going around and collecting items and wandering through random versions of Hill Valley just didn't work for me.
No. I mean, it was okay for what it was, but I wouldn't tell people to play it or anything.
No. And what about the cartoon? I know I watched the cartoon.
I watched it when I was a kid, and I remember
loved it. Yeah.
I loved it when I was a kid. I remember, I think it was Burger King had their kids meal thing for a while. I had all their toys. I was obsessed. But I tried to rewatch some of the episodes.
Yeah, you can't revisit stuff like that.
Ghostbusters is still super. I mean,
first 2 seasons.
Yeah,
first 2 seasons.
When Dave Coulier shows up, it's
Dave Coulier ruins everything. #Full House.
Also, poor Aunt Becky.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for her at all
I don't
about
either.
that. No. So what do you think about the fact that they're trying to remake or make a new Back to the Future, like a whole new continuity? Because obviously Michael J. Fox at this point can't come back for it.
Well, I mean, I actually don't mind remakes or reboots as long as they do the original core ideals of the story justice. Because, like I was kind of saying before, there was some like slight nods towards like how racist the 1950s were.
They made some. They did actually do a little commentary.
Yeah, and it was like on the underhand, like I mean, for a 1980s movie, they tackled rape.
Yeah.
Like there's movies that are made now that don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that in today's climate, it might not be a terrible thing to have something that's kind of lighthearted that has those slight undertones. Because if you think about it, our society hasn't really progressed much from 1950. Yeah, we have better technology and whatnot, but
Well, every time it feels like we make a step forward, then we see some awful crap like the last couple of years that make you realize, wow, in some respects, we aren't doing that much better.
no, it's just people don't look at it. They're like, well, I haven't seen a racist person, so they must not exist.
Yeah.
So, like, I'd be curious, like, honestly, and I know that I kind of want to see it done through a more ethnic perspective, I guess, because
Is this just so you can work in the Cleveland show joke, Black to the Future?
yes. Thanks for ruining the joke.
No, I saw that coming. I couldn't help it.
But yeah, I mean, like,
I certainly don't see a problem with recast. I mean, if you filmed it in the modern era,
yep,
and you said, okay, Marty McFly is going to jump 30 years in the past from today, then it would be 1988.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole concept of the movie is different because the racism issues are very different in the 80s than they were today.
Yeah. I mean, even if you do, like, you could do the AIDS crisis instead.
That just sounds depressing.
I mean, racism's depressing.
Wow.
Also,
I don't know what you could tackle with it. It's just, you wouldn't be able to do it, like, you clearly, if you said it now and then did 30 years into the past for the 80s, just by that fact alone, you couldn't do shot-for-shot remake.
no,
There's no way you can do it. Like, just Marty going back in time and playing rock music isn't going to play the same in the 80s as it does now.
No.
He could probably introduce grunge music to them a few years early, but that's about it.
Speed metal.
Yeah. Like, I know you guys haven't heard of Skrillex, but when you do...
Oh, dubstep. Just wait for the drop. What's the drop?
It'll happen. You'll be waiting 30 years.
I mean, if you did like the rap perspective, I know rap was around in the 80s.
1975 in Brooklyn. I just watched an episode of Patriot Act that covered that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, or Brooklyn or Queens was one of the two. No, I don't come from New York.
New York.
I don't know what the difference is.
One of the boroughs.
But not the Upper West Side. That's no. But yeah, I mean, you'd have to change a lot of the basic concepts, a few of the different things. But at the same time, some of those things could be done really well. I mean, the 80s is when all like the high school Rat Pack style movies happen.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine Marty McFly going back and then doing like a parody of the Rat Pack movies just by having him in there commenting on it? Like, there's some prime material that could be really interesting in a Back to the Future movie. And then if you decide that you want to do the same sequel and third movie that, have him travel to the future, we're at least a little better about depicting the future now than we used to be.
Yeah.
It might not be any more realistic, but it certainly looks more futuristic.
Yeah.
And just give us our fucking hoverboards for once. And then you can still do a Western. It doesn't really matter because Westerns are cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or have Biff accidentally travel back with technology into the Western and make a real, like, Westworld. Oh, that's the
cool.
Back Future I would watch.
I mean, and also, as I'm sitting here thinking, they kind of already did Back to the Future currently. It's a little movie called Hot Tub Time Machine.
That's such a terrible, delightful movie. I heard the sequel was awful,
Oh, the
though.
sequel was garbage.
And, hey, there's another series that did time travel two in a row and won't do a third.
No, second one was, I wanted to like, because I love the first one.
Yeah.
But the second one was not there.
Yeah. I still have high hope for the third Bill and Ted movie, which is apparently really in production.
Yeah, they've been saying that forever, though.
No, but studio is signed on at this point, far as I know, as are the two actors, because they've been the ones pushing it. Script is approved and everything. I think and they were shopping it around at film festivals to try and get a buyer for it. Like, they haven't filmed the movie, but they're trying to get a backer to
I'll give them $50.
Just kickstart the damn thing.
Yeah.
It worked for Super Troopers.
Yeah, Super Troopers 2 was awful.
But they kickstarted it, and they're thinking about kickstarting a third one now.
Oh, the second one was so bad, though.
I'm not going to watch them.
It was so cringy.
Well, I heard the second one was basically the same jokes, just not as good.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Anyway, Back to the Future. Pretty sure we've just talked ourselves fully out on that topic.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll time travel and do it all again next week. This has been Not So Live from Asteroid G. I'm Mike Finkelstein.
I'm Josh Schaefer.
And we will see you next time.
Peace.